It feels as though we've stepped into a science fiction narrative. We have these enigmatic objects moving across the sky. It's unsettling communities, and authorities are on high alert. These drone sightings seem to be occurring everywhere, from residential areas to locations like military bases and critical infrastructure.
The Biden administration has commented on the situation. They stated that although a lot of what we're seeing is explainable, the lack of clarity surrounding some of the activity is concerning. A mix of things like legal drones, regular aircraft, even stars that have been misidentified.
But if the sightings are explainable, why is there such concern?
The administration has assured us that there is no evidence of a direct threat to national security or public safety, but some of the activity has been labeled as irresponsible. There's a distinct difference. A threat means that there is imminent danger, organized malicious intent, a high likelihood of harm. When we say irresponsible, we mean that there is potential for things to go awry, even if there isn't malicious intent.
Could you provide us with an example to illustrate that distinction?
Let's imagine someone is speeding down a residential street. That's what we would consider irresponsible. Now, let's say someone intentionally rams a car. That's a threat. Both scenarios involve a vehicle and both have the potential for danger. However, the intent and level of risk vary significantly.
So, although it's not an immediate threat, the potential for issues arising from these drones is what's raising a red flag. There have been concrete examples of this activity. For instance, the clusters of drones over the Round Valley Reservoir in New Jersey.
We need to be cautious with those early reports. We saw that some of those drones over the reservoir turned out to be planes. This demonstrates how challenging identification can be, particularly at night.
I understand. What about the sightings near locations like Picatinny Arsenal and former President Trump's golf course? It seems pretty serious that these sightings led to flight restrictions.
It is, and similar incidents have been reported around other sensitive sites. We have reports of activity over Naval Weapons Station Earl. This is definitely a concern. We've seen Stewart International Airport temporarily close their runways. Even Wright-Patterson Air Force Base was forced to restrict airspace. This isn't a handful of isolated events.
I can see why people are making comparisons to things like a foreign mothership launching these drones.
That specific claim has been refuted by the Pentagon. There's no evidence to support such a scenario.
So no mothership. But these events are having a tangible impact. How are the authorities responding?
States like New Jersey and New York are using drone detection systems in an attempt to gain a clearer picture. But there's a disconnect between what officials are saying to reassure the public and the anxiety at the local level. We're seeing officials recommending extreme caution, even suggesting the use of hazmat suits if someone encounters a downed drone. This level of concern really highlights how a lack of information can fuel fear.
It leads to the question of whether or not shooting down these drones is a feasible option. We've heard suggestions like this from both former President Trump and Senator Blumenthal.
Shooting down any aircraft, especially over populated areas, raises significant legal and ethical issues. There's the risk of hitting the wrong target, and we can't forget about the potential for harm from falling debris. These are not insignificant concerns.
Wouldn't non-lethal options such as electronic jamming be a safer approach?
Possibly, but for those methods to be effective, we need information that we often don't have in these situations. We need positive identification of the drone, its operator, and their intent. Using such tools without that information could backfire and even be dangerous.
So it appears we're caught in a kind of jurisdictional gray area. The FAA establishes the regulations, but local law enforcement often lacks the resources and authority to enforce them, especially when we're dealing with these drone activities that are deemed irresponsible but not necessarily threatening.
That's precisely the challenge we're facing. It's a gray area. The current system doesn't adequately address that space between irresponsible and threatening. What's needed are clearer guidelines, and there needs to be better coordination between federal and local agencies so they can respond effectively to these events. It's this lack of clarity that contributes to the anxiety. This situation really underscores a critical challenge we're up against when it comes to new technologies. It's about striking a balance. We need to establish effective oversight without hindering innovation. We're seeing that the drone industry is developing rapidly and the regulations are lagging behind.
It seems like we're trying to establish the rules for the road while cars are already speeding down the highway.
That's a good way to put it. We have to find that sweet spot. The balance between supporting the growth of the sector while also prioritizing the public's safety and security. It goes beyond regulations, though. We also need to consider education. Operators need to understand how to use these drones responsibly, and there has to be a culture of awareness.
The whole situation really shines a light on how important clear communication is. There seems to be a disconnect between the official messages, which are typically reassuring, and the anxieties we're seeing at the local level. People are being told to don hazmat suits if they find a drone that has gone down.
The disconnect points to a lack of understanding when it comes to drones and what they can do. Many people still think of science fiction when they hear the word drone, or they associate them with military operations. We need to break down those misconceptions. We need to give people accurate information and address their concerns openly.
I think it extends beyond just drones themselves, though. It's about the larger implications of technology, the way it's evolving faster than we can grasp the consequences. We've seen it happen with social media, artificial intelligence, and now drones.
It's true that the rate of technological advancement shows no signs of slowing down. This means that we need to be proactive. We need to anticipate the challenges and adapt our laws and policies. Even our social norms need to keep up.
Speaking of adapting, one solution that's been put forward to address the drone activity is to implement more advanced technology, something like an AI-powered detection system.
I think AI definitely has a role to play in managing the increasingly complex airspace. Can you picture a system that can differentiate between a drone, a plane, and even a star? A system that could analyze the flight path and assess the level of risk, all in real time.
It sounds incredibly futuristic. But wouldn't we be opening a whole new can of worms by relying on AI?
That's a valid point. We can't ignore the possibility of bias within algorithms or the risk of inaccurate readings. And of course, there are ethical considerations when it comes to handing over control to automated systems.
So it's not a straightforward solution. We would just be shifting the problem.
Exactly. It's important to remember that technology is just a tool. It can be utilized for good or for bad. It's our job to make sure that how we develop and deploy it aligns with our values and our priorities.
This idea of managing technology with more technology makes me think about the self-driving car debate. We're essentially asking machines to make choices that have an impact in the real world.
That's really the core of it all. As we integrate more technology into our lives, we need to wrestle with some fundamental questions. Questions about who is accountable, about who is in control, about the balance of power between humans and machines.
It goes beyond drones. It touches upon what it means to be human as our world becomes increasingly technological.
These aren't conversations we can afford to put off. We need to engage thoughtfully and critically. We need to understand what's at stake.
It feels like an enormous weight to place on the shoulders of the average person.
It is, but it's also an opportunity. We have the power to shape tomorrow with the choices we make today. We can sit back and just observe, or we can actively participate in creating the future we want.
It sounds like a call to action.
It is. It's a call for everyone to make sure they're informed, to engage in these important conversations, to make their voices heard. We have more agency than we might think. It's our collective choices that will determine the future of technology. It's our demands for accountability and transparency. It's our willingness to have these critical conversations. All of these things will ultimately shape how technology impacts our lives.
It seems as though we're at a crossroads.
Yeah.
Technology keeps advancing at an incredible pace. It's pushing the boundaries of what we once thought possible, and sometimes it seems as if it's even surpassing our ability to properly manage it.
I think the drone sightings really embody this trend. They bring to light the tensions that exist between innovation and oversight, between the appeal of new tech and the possibility that there will be unintended consequences.
It almost feels like a test, how we as a society will navigate this technological landscape, which seems to become more complex all the time.
It's imperative that we come up with new frameworks for understanding and for managing these technologies. We need frameworks that can go further than traditional models of regulation, models that consider the ethical, social, and even the philosophical implications of these advancements.
This can't be left solely to lawmakers and policymakers. We all need to shift our mindsets, to recognize that we all have a stake in this technological revolution.
It's about cultivating that sense of collective responsibility. For the technologies that we create and that we utilize, that means we need to encourage developers to think about ethical implications. We need to foster informed public discourse. And we need to demand transparency and accountability from those who are wielding these powerful tools.
I think recognizing that technology isn't a neutral force is crucial. It's molded by human decisions. It reflects our values and our priorities.
Technologies are extensions of ourselves.
Yeah.
And because of that, they hold the potential for great good, but also for great harm. The challenge lies in harnessing that power for the betterment of humanity while minimizing the risks that are inherent.
That requires a lot of foresight and critical thinking, which could be difficult in a world that's obsessed with the next big thing.
It's easy to get swept up in the excitement of new technology, but we need to resist that. Instead, we should be focusing on developing technologies that align with our values, technologies that will lead to a future that's more just, more equitable, and more sustainable.
It feels like a monumental task, but if we want a future where technology is serving us and not the other way around, it's a task we have to undertake.
The future isn't set in stone. We have a choice. The choices that we make today will determine what that future looks like. Engaging in these crucial conversations, demanding innovation that is responsible, and holding ourselves accountable, these are the things that will create a future where technology empowers us. A future where technology helps to connect us and build a better world for all.
We appreciate you joining us today for this discussion on such a complex and constantly evolving issue.
Goodbye.